We're here today with Jeff Sprecher, who's the founder and CEO of Intercontinental Exchange. We will not call it ICE because that used to be a cute nickname, not so much anymore. But Jeff, over more than a quarter of a century, has built an amazing set of companies here. He's approaches things in a very different kind of way. He brings in engineers, thoughtfulness, and structure to very complicated ideas, and he's built an enormous and very successful and very beneficial to our economy company. And it's a treat having known you now for many years and have a chance to spend time together. It's a great opportunity to sit down and chat about all the things that are going on in your world and get some insights into what you see to help us think about how the world's changing and how we might be prepared for it. So thanks for spending time with me here today, Jeff.
I'm thrilled to be here and always enjoy being with you.
So it seems to me that your series of successes, and we won't talk about any of the failures, but your successes are all entwined in that you look at things, and it seems to me that you're able to make the calculus that it's hairy and it's complicated and it's a mess, but in there is an opportunity. And you say, how can I use technology to make it simpler, transparent, reliable, therefore very, very trustworthy? It seems to be the ingredients that you look for and have had success with.
That's exactly right. I mean, you've distilled it. It's messier in real life than that. But when I was a kid, I was the kid that my parents would buy me something, and rather than play with it, I would take it apart and then see how it worked.
And that was in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes, in Madison, Wisconsin. And so my leadership style is to look for things that feel messy, they feel broken. I also have acquired a lot of things, or I'm not a. Elon Musk is trying to figure out how to take us to Mars. Okay, I'm not that. I'm glad there are Elon Musks in the world that are really driving innovation. I'm much more about, here's a great brand, or here's something that is iconic. It seems a little messed up, and maybe we can go in and reorient it. So I tend to do well with things that other smart people have invented, and maybe they've just lost their way, or they've kind of scratch and dent merchandise. And New York Stock Exchange was an unloved company, for example, when we bought it. People ask me all the time, how the heck did you buy the New York Stock Exchange?
It was a for-profit at one time.
It was
not-for-profit.
It was not-for-profit, owned by the members.
Yes.
And you had to buy a membership. So it was a club.
Yep.
And at one point before I arrived here, they decided to monetize it basically and turn those memberships into public shares and take the company public. And once it became a public company, it was loved and then became unloved. And I remember when we bought this company, investors were saying, "Why would you want to own that?" And I just said, "It's the New York Stock Exchange." The answer is in the name. This company was started in 1792. It's been through everything.
Yes.
The invention of everything. And its life has been threatened many times by changes in technology or world events or what have you. Surely it's just a little scratched and dented, and we can come in here and figure out how to do it. And so I tend to look for those opportunities, and it's interesting in life. There are often, iconic businesses and opportunities that fall out of favor, and those are always kind of interesting to me to say, could it be fixed and saved?
What had to be fixed here?
They had the New York Stock Exchange was actually a merger of a number of exchanges. The old, and you'll remember these because you're a contemporary of mine, but they bought the American Stock Exchange and the Pacific Stock Exchange and a few others. And each of those had their own technology, their own infrastructure. And rather than pick the best one and move everybody to the best one. They sort of put a wrapper around all the technology so that to the outside world it looked like it was a unified whole. But under the covers it was a whole bunch of hamsters on little wheels. And so we said to ourselves, well, certainly we'll just go in there and pick the best technologies and we'll move everything onto that and we'll get rid of all the rest. And when we got in there and finally bought the company and then looked at the technology hard, we said they're all terrible. And so unfortunately we're going to have to start over. And we didn't exactly know how to start over, so I found a little company that had some really smart entrepreneurs that were building technology for trading of stocks and bonds. And we went to these entrepreneurs and we said, look, you can build your company, or we can buy your company and you can build the New York Stock Exchange. And so we bought this company. We basically shut down what they were doing, brought all the people in here and said, have at it. We trust you.
How long did it's never done, but how long
it's
did
never
it take?
done. It took honestly about 10 years but it was one of those cases where we were building a bridge and the cars were driving on it.
Sure.
And also every major financial institution is networked into the New York Stock Exchange. And we couldn't ask all of Wall Street and broader international finance to rewrite their connectivity. So we had to build something that the puzzle piece plugged into them and their legacy systems while we were modern. So a really interesting challenge. So we did it in bits and bobs behind the scenes, insulated our customers. And today, I mean, we do billions of transactions a day on the stock exchange. I don't think people realize it's probably bigger than Google search in terms of.
Is it really?
Yeah, technology. And because it's so highly regulated, we have to save every transaction for 7 years.
7 years.
What we've really become is massive database and networking specialists of dealing gobs of data, organizing it and storing it and making it searchable so that you can go back and doing that in a way that has 100%, knock on wood, reliability.
Wow, that 10-year build.
Yeah.
That takes fortitude.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's above my knowledge base, and we put these smart young people in there and said, we trust you, do your best. We're here, you know, let us know. And they did a great job.
Yeah. You started out in the energy exchange business.
Yes.
And what drew you to that? Same thing? Complex, out of favor, I think we can do something special here?
You know, I went to, I got my master's degree at Pepperdine University, which is in Malibu, California.
Pretty good-looking place.
That's why I went there, honestly. I wanted to meet girls on roller skates that skated up and down the boardwalk in Venice, California. That was one of the allures as a young person. And
the weather's a little different than Madison,
totally.
Wisconsin.
Beautiful campus. There was everything about it. The last thing I cared about was, you know, its rating in the world. And so anyway, I met a guy in college that had this idea to start a company to do alternative energy. And at that time, Jerry Brown was the governor. He was governor multiple times, but this is his first time. He wanted to pioneer alternative energy. And there was a company, an investment bank known as Drexel Burnham Lambert that was in California, based in California, and a guy named Michael Milken who invented the junk bond. And it turns out that you know what we were doing, which was trying to build alternative energy, the world was saying we're going to take California tax credits, strip them off, and sell them to people on Wall Street. So we were able to raise a lot of capital as young people using these sophisticated techniques. And so I started to learn how the ways of finance and Wall Street. I started to actually realize over time, while our altruistic goal was to do alternative energy, the world was looking at us as if we were doing, you know, creating financial products. And then I think that helped me to acquire. I've probably done at least 50 acquisitions in my life, and you know, I understand that process very well.
Did you work with Michael?
I had one of those meetings where I was the number two. It was my friend had the idea, so I was his number two. And we were invited to meet Michael at his home in Beverly Hills at 4:30 in the morning.
No.
And we got up at like 3
Uh-huh.
and dressed as best we could. And we got in a car and we pulled up to this mansion that had a big wall around it and a gate. And the whole neighborhood was dark. And there was a call box there. And we sat in the car and said, are we sure we have the right address?
I don't want to wake somebody else up.
And we debated who's going to go push the button. Me, because I'm number two and I'm in the passenger seat, or should my colleague who was driving and number one push the button? And we pushed the button, and an answer came back, yes. And we said, is this the Milken residence? We're here to see Mr. Milken. And they said, pull in. And I'll never forget that. And it was symbolic in that, okay, you know, there were no business hours. I mean, you know, these were serious people that were working around the clock, and kind of elevated just that 4:30 experience. Sort of elevated this idea that
what is work?
Yeah, if we're going to be here working with these people, okay,
got to put a big boy pants on.
Exactly. So it was good. It was a good early lesson. So yes, I met him one time, you know, in his house at 4:30 in the morning.
I've had the opportunity to spend some time with him in the recent few years. I had the opportunity to say hello to him a few times, but Worth Media Group is his media partner for the Milken Conference.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And I was out there 2 years ago now for other business, and Rich DiTizio, who is the CEO of the Milken Institute, is a wonderful guy, originally a New York, Long Islander. And I was going to visit Rich, and he said, Mike, I'd like you to stop in and say hello. So I figured we'd stop in his office and say hello. And I was hosting a dinner that night back where I was at Marina Del Rey. And we sat down, and I thought, 5 minutes maybe. Well, an hour and 48 minutes later, I didn't want it to end. I wanted to hear everything he had to say. And I'm looking at my wife. I have to. I don't want to, but I have to go. But I so enjoyed that, and we've had a chance to connect. I think he's really, really special.
Yes. Well, it's interesting, he has a second phase in life where he has really become more influential than a guy with money.
Yeah, really has. And the breadth of the things they're doing at the Milken Institute are just amazing.
Yeah.
First, he started out when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer,
right, and
changed how. I just came from a hospital board meeting, and his influence is present all the time when you're looking at research and coordination. And he's trying to do the same thing in philanthropy now. So much is wasted in philanthropy, and it makes him nuts.
Right.
Interesting, man. So as you look at the landscape now, when we chatted, I remember it was during COVID. I was out for a walk during the height of the lockdown, and I listened to you on a podcast, and you talked about the next big, hairy, crazy business that you thought a different vision, a different approach could make simpler, more transparent, and better for all of us in the country, and that was the home industry, home buying, home financing in particular. And now you've been in that a couple of years. Is it what you expected, and how's it going?
It's harder than I thought it would be.
Is it?
But it's also, I'm more confident that we have the right vision, if that makes sense.
But you didn't try and swallow the whole thing. You just went after financing.
Yeah. So.
Because it's a title insurance, all the legalities, deeds.
Buying a house is so complicated. We during COVID,
it's the largest transaction most families ever make.
Exactly. During COVID, we were all at home on our computers, and if we were buying stuff, we were buying on Amazon or some web-based or 1-800-Flowers or David.
Only if you have good judgment.
Exactly. And so I noticed that there were all these opportunities when you checked out to say, do you want to buy now and pay later?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could literally buy a box of chocolates, and it would ask you, do you want to buy now and pay later? And it would immediately underwrite you and figure out your credit worthiness or whatever, however they did it. And I thought, okay, well, when those chocolates arrive, you're going to eat them, and there's no collateral. And so,
What is it they know?
Yes, but it was like when you buy a house that has a foundation, it's attached to the earth. You can see it, on Google Earth. It's going to be there. It's part of Pavlov's hierarchy of needs. Like it's your safety and security. It's one of the last things you'll give up.
Yes.
Why does it take 60 days to lend people in a house? That was the simple question I had that came about because of my home shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer when you scratch the surface of it was, well, it's a complicated transaction. There's lots of documents. There's a lot of paper. There's a lot of things that have to come together at the end of that process. And it was mostly paper-based. And prior to COVID, most states, which regulate mortgages, required that you have a wet signature on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And COVID got some states, but not all states,
mm-hmm.
to say, well, maybe you can sign with a click
yes.
on an iPad or
mm-hmm.
With your mouse or from the comfort of your kitchen. And so we started to say, why can't we put together a network, since we run networks and since we're attached to most major financial institutions because of the exchanges we owned, why can't we put together a network where we get everybody using a common language and data set so that we can ship this data around and build a infrastructure that a young couple buying their first house can do that quickly and easily and click a button and close on the mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've bought 7 leading software companies that range from very current cloud-based state-of-the-art technology to COBOL-based mainframes buried in some anonymous data center.
Mm-hmm.
And
you bought these companies for this purpose?
Yes, to string them together. So I bought a CRM company. I bought a loan underwriting company. I bought a closing company. I bought a network that sends the completed documents to the county recorder. And we bought a...
So these are all companies that fill some gap in that chain.
Correct. And if you were a lender, you would have strung a bunch of this stuff together a la carte
uh-huh.
and tried to make it all talk within your ecosystem. And I thought, this is all... Do you remember when word processing came around? A lot of your audience is probably younger than me. But when word processing...
Pretty much everyone's younger than
me. Came around, we all had a different word processor. And we would type a document and you would email it to somebody, and the word processor had an import-export
mm-hmm. button,
and you would import somebody else's document. And when you looked at it, the pagination was wrong, the spacing was screwy, things weren't centered, but you could read it.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow, over time, we all ended up on Microsoft Word.
Mm-hmm.
When I started my company here, I wrote the first business plan with WordPerfect, and I did the first budget in Lotus 1-2-3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those don't even really exist today.
No.
But why is that? We all kind of migrated. We all said, I know if I attach, this Excel spreadsheet or this Word document to my email,
somebody becomes the standard.
Yeah, and it was organic.
Mm-hmm.
And I also realized, like, every time I buy a new computer, I buy those software packages, and they're, I just bought a new laptop not too long ago, and I think it was $299 or something for the home and student package, so it was relative to the cost of the computer was pretty minor.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy to buy it. Is kind of a utility, and I said to myself, why isn't this software to underwrite a mortgage that everybody's going through? 70 to 80% of mortgages go through Fannie or Freddie,
and it's painful.
Conforming loans. Like why? I also had this view with technology, which is, as the young couple filling out the application, and you type in the address of the house, why can't the computer go out and learn everything that it can about the house?
Mm-hmm.
And when you type in your employer's name, why can't it go pull information that exists about, who you are and what you're doing, and so that by the time you finish filling out the application, that the lender would have a high confidence. Yeah. It's a little bit like the buy now, pay later concept. So anyway,
and they can do that in seconds.
Yeah, and it seems like all these, hyperscalers know everything about us.
They sure do.
I'm sure you in selling flowers and candy and celebrations and balloons and everything you do, there's all kind of data that you know about your consumers that exists. So why can't we pull that together around a mortgage platform? Now, there are laws and rules and that we have to conform to, but the reality is this until COVID
But you're used to dealing in very, very regulated environments.
Correct.
So that was something that you didn't have a fear of.
No, in fact, I kind of embrace it.
You knew it's a core competency.
Yes, exactly. I kind of embrace it in the sense that it's one more thing that makes it hard to do what we do. But if you can crack that nut, it cements your standing with your customers. It's just if you can insulate your customers from that. So we go, for example, because mortgage is highly regulated, and we have 3,500 banks and lenders now that are on this network. Instead of saying to the regulators, hey, you could go audit 3,500 individuals, why don't you just come to us and audit us once?
Yes.
And we'll show you everything that everybody does. And in a way, we volunteered to be regulated.
Sure.
Banks are regulated. Software generally is not. But we said to the regulators, let's just cut out the middleman and get to the root of the matter. Well, now we go to our customers and we say, if you use this software, the regulator's already here. They know what they've seen it. If there's an issue, if there's a new law, a new rule, we'll conform to it. You don't have to worry about it. We've got so many people that are doing so many things.
Set the stage for delicious moments this spring, complete with gourmet food and premium wine. From the first sip to the last bite, you'll find everything you need to make family dinners and celebrations memorable.
Now, at one level, those bank customers of yours are saying, at the senior-most level, are saying, oh, yeah, it's nirvana.
Yeah.
But then there's a whole bunch of people who say, no, my job is to take this here and put it over there.
Oh, yeah. And that's why your initial question was, how's it going? We see the same thing with AI.
But you've been in AI for 15 years.
We have. And didn't call it that.
Yes. Machine learning.
We had, in fact, after the financial crisis of 2009, 2010, if you recall, there was a period that everybody said there are toxic assets on the books of the banks, and it could bring down the banking system. And there are all these things called credit default swaps that are tying up the financial system.
That weren't on anybody's exchange.
Correct. I never even heard of a credit default swap. I didn't even know what it was. I went to the then Treasury Secretary Geithner and said, I think we could build something to help you. And he was lovely. He said to me, Jeff, I'm with government. I can't tell banks and financial institutions what to do. But if you build a barn and open those doors, I'll run those damn horses right in front of you. And so we did. Anyway, it was another one of those things in life where, I don't know, you've seen this as an entrepreneur. Nobody rings a bell when opportunity knocks. You just kind of have to say, well, maybe I'll stick my nose in it and see if it's something. So anyway, we took, I think, $16 trillion worth of credit default swaps off the books of the banks, stuck them in a subsidiary that we created, cut deals with all the major lenders, got the government involved.
Early on as a regulator.
Early on, yeah, to free up the financial system. I literally bought a company, a brokerage firm that specialized in credit default swaps just to buy domain knowledge because we didn't know exactly what they were. And we said, these guys know what they are. And would you be willing to help us build something? So it's kind of a common theme where if we don't understand it, we try to find somebody and hire it or buy it, or
whether it was the team that built the technology that runs all the exchanges now.
So anyway, that business, I mean, the bill that's called Dodd-Frank, which is a financial services bill that passed a couple of years later, was basically designed to regulate credit default swaps and to prevent this from happening again.
And by that time, you'd already become the clearinghouse?
Yes. And so, I give you that anecdote just because you want to talk about regulation. I mean, no regulator wants the world to be impacted the way that happened in 2009 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
That is very highly regulated, highly scrutinized. But the business opportunity was to take that burden off your customers and centralize it, and then bring experts around it and make government comfortable and regulators comfortable. And in a way, you're regulated, but there's a bit of a partnership there, which is nobody wants the world to blow up.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. The regulators don't. We just need to convince each other every day that we're heading the right direction.
Jeff, tell me this, though. Fannie and Freddie you mentioned. Freddie and Sally?
I bought a company called Ellie Mae, which was a technology company, but today Fannie and Freddie are the two guarantors, along with Ginnie Mae, which does military.
But they had their own regulator.
Yes.
That was a government regulator to regulate government mortgage backers.
Yes.
Didn't work out so well.
No. Look, and we have a lot of risk that we oversee too, and risk management is about predicting the future, and partly the way you predict the future is to study the past.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to understand that history never fully repeats twice in the exact same way.
It resembles.
It resembles. It's a cousin too. And so, if it was always perfect, we would all write contracts where there would never need to be a court.
Mm-hmm.
We'd solve every problem and write it down. And so, there is risk in the systems that are trying to de-risk the systems, and this is where you just need humans that can adapt and rule. One of the things I argue all the time to regulators is don't write the rules so strict that there isn't a little wiggle at the height of the crisis, because you think it's going to be, you're going to write a rule that's going to prevent what happened in the past, but what happened in the past isn't going to happen the same way. You need a little bit of wiggle that gives you the regulatory leeway to look at what's actually going on the ground and allow things to be tweaked in a way that didn't happen in the past, but that will prevent calamity in the future.
So you and your team have been in complex, data-driven environments now forever, for a quarter of a century. And so you've been using machine learning for most of that time. The introduction of AI, as I would understand it as a consumer 3 years ago, and how it's exploded on all of us. And as I rush to try and learn to have some kind of understanding of what's coming, does AI just speed up all of this for us? As a consumer, I love it. I work with it every day. I'm trying to learn more and more about it. I feel like I'm standing on a riverbank. And on the other side of the riverbank is AI land, and everything is interesting, and amazing things are happening in healthcare, and predictability, and weather predictability. Amazing things are happening over there. But I had to get across this river to get there, and we're not all going to be able to make it. So there's a period of turbulence here in front of us that's pretty dramatic, and the bridge hasn't been built yet. So my excitement is I can start to understand how this is going to change everything. I'm a believer. Even if I can't imagine what the change is going to be, I know it's going to impact everything. But I am worried about people who just graduating from school, in college now, not having the ability to learn the AI technologies, or the people who were the young people who just graduated who can't even find a job interview someplace. That the incoming jobs are less, the entry-level jobs. What do you feel about that period of disruption when everyone says, well, the buggy whips were replaced by automobiles. But those buggy whip manufacturers had a rough few years before they adapted to something else. How do you feel about what's going to happen in this period of turbulence? And how do you think we as business people, politicians at all, Kelly working in the government with a lot of small businesses that are going to be impacted, how do you think we should be anticipating and managing that risk that you're so good at?
It's a great question. I think about it the way you do, which is I think there's short-term risk and long-term opportunity. In other words, I've read articles that say when the Mercury spacecraft went up for the first time and went into the atmosphere, the technology on that was less than what we have on our phones in the pocket, right? Mm. The amount of compute that we have in the world since that, or since we went to the moon, it's asymptotically grown. And the number of people in the workforce have also asymptotically grown. Yes. In other words, technology, we all figured out how to adapt and embrace the technology, incorporate it. I talked about, word processing and how efficient it is right now and spreadsheet making compared to just 10 or 20 years ago. So I'm long-term optimistic. I do feel like that the compact that I think we made in society, that if you go to high school and get good grades and go to college and get good grades and come out the other end, for that cohort, it's difficult because a lot of the kinds of jobs that you would take a young professional, people that wanted to go work in offices that came through colleges, are quickly being automated away.
Yes.
Now, oddly, my wife, you mentioned my wife, Kelly Loeffler, who is in the administration.
Do you still call her senator?
I call her honey. My wife is in the cabinet, in the current cabinet, and runs a small business administration. And she's traveling tremendously. And with the current state of affairs that she tells me about, with the tariffs that we have that are pushing a lot of small parts and manufacturing back to the U.S., there are dozens and dozens and dozens in every state of small companies. They're usually companies of 20 to 50 people that have CNC machines and other interesting technologies that can make small parts that make their way into all kinds of things that we used to send overseas that are now coming back. But those factories of today are not like the factories we think of the immigrants.
The skill level is way higher.
Way up. You're talking about 3D printers and CNC machines that don't necessarily need a college education to run, but they're not bright. Yeah, they're not hands-on, steel making, and so you need a certain aptitude that and a pipeline of how to take people and say, here's a career that can pay really high salaries, that you can build a career and get into the workforce in a different way.
But it sounds to me that the education system isn't properly aligned.
Correct. And that's where I think the dislocation is in the short term. I feel it in my own company. I'll give you an example. My company is called Intercontinental Exchange. So most of your viewers have probably never heard of it.
Well, they've heard of something else called ICE.
They have, yeah, and that's why I use the long form. Our ticker symbol on the New York Stock Exchange is ICE, so everybody calls us ICE. And Secretary Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, now calls me Capitalist ICE in order to define which one.
Well, he's impressed me.
They are, yeah, he is. Yeah, I got to know him, fortunately, before he went into government, so I became impressed with him and had an opportunity on a number of occasions to talk to the president about him and his thinking on bringing him in. But
so back to the education system, training these people, and you say even in your own company you're worried.
In my own company, we on our website under our job opening page, we decided for the first time to put internships. And we decided, we had never really done internships. We tried it and it got abused. Everybody has a niece or a nephew or a neighbor
we had the same experience.
That's looking for something to do in the summer, and they'll park them there. And I was like, come on, that's not who we are. We want to be high profile, elite, best of the best. And so anyway, we decided in this environment, let's do 50 interns. And in order to qualify for an intern, we said to each manager, you have to have an open position in the company that you haven't been able to hire for. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, bring in an intern. We'll train them in whatever it is you need them to do. We'll pay them, and do it during a summer season. And if the person works out well, then give them the full-time job. In other words, we're going to take some risk on some young people.
Yes.
In ways
who wouldn't otherwise
be qualified for that job. And so we had 50 of them. We got 50,000 applications. And this job was listed on our website, okay? It went viral. Somehow, the way networks work today, it got into the viral network. Yeah. And the quality of the people that were applying, I mean, it was crazy. And moms and dads were calling the switchboard, and people were sending letters, and people were trying to figure out who works at this company that I know that I can get in. It got so crazy that we finally had to publish, don't call us, don't contact us, if you do, we're going to disqualify this person if you bug us too much, because we're buried with this. And now, of course, we're using AI to sort through all of this. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the point that and by the way, we're replicating that program. We're expanding it. It worked out great. We got great people. We decided we have an obligation to society to train some of these people. I can't complain that this is a government issue. The private sector is going to move much faster, and so let's take a chance on some of these people. I'll tell you if you got a minute. I got a story that I'm very proud of. One of the things during COVID that really bothered me was trying to run a company virtually. And you mentioned that I'm based in Georgia, and Georgia was one of the first states to reopen. And mm-hmm. I said to people, get back to the office. If you're willing to take the risk, the governor has opened the state. Like, we really need, so much of what we do is random, bumping into each other, ideas bubble up, things we didn't plan on. Like, it's so hard to do over video. So anyway, I go back to the office, and our headquarters has got 14 stories, and we have these kind of coffee machines that they're the higher end ones where there are beans, raw beans in the top, and when you make a cup of coffee, it grinds them. Anyway, it never really dawned on me that somebody's got to clean the grounds out of that machine every day. So I have all these highfalutin people that we're paying a fortune to that are worried about coming back to the office and are working from home. And I'm going in every day, and here's this young woman. She's going floor by floor, opening each of the coffee machines to see if anybody made a cup of coffee to take the coffee grounds out. And so anyway, one day I said to her, and she was one of those young people that walk around with the headphones on, which kind of sends a signal like,
leave me alone.
So I said to her, I said, how's the coffee business? And she looked at me and said, Mister, I'm not in the coffee business. And I said, oh. I said, what business are you in? And she said, I don't know yet, but this isn't my business. And so anyway, I admired this. I'm roaming around this office. It's kind of empty. And yet she's there every day cleaning the coffee machines with barely any grounds in them. So I became kind of fascinated with her, and I said to her one time, you seem to be doing a really good job. I'm really glad that you're here. And she said, I don't have a choice. I have a car payment. And she said, I need this job. And I said, well, you said that you it wasn't your career, and you're calling it a job. What do you want to do? And she said, I really want to go become a hairstylist. I want to work in a salon. And she said, I'm saving my money, and I'm going to go. I've been looking. There's a number of schools that I can go to and learn that trade. And I've been looking at job openings. And she said, my cousin lives in a different city. And I figure if I can get through this, then I'll go live with my cousin. But my mom and dad don't really want me to leave home. And so we're having a little bit of a fight internally. And so anyway, I went to my HR department. So I said to her, well, when are you going to go to school? And she says, well, I'm going at night. And she said, you know, I live 2 hours away from here. I said, 2 hours? I see you here every morning. She said, yes, I get up at 4 a.m. and I leave the house at 5. I have to beat traffic in this big city that we're in, Atlanta. And then I've got my route, and then I go home, and then I go to my classes. And so anyway, I went to my HR department, and I said, we've got people that we're paying a fortune to that are not coming in here. This young girl is getting up at 4 a.m. I said, what entry-level jobs do we have? And so they gave me 3 jobs, and I grabbed her one morning, and I said, would you be interested in working for me, working here? And she said, I don't know. Why? What would you have me do? And I said, come into my office if you don't mind. So she sat down, and I had printed out these 3 job descriptions. And I set them down in front of her. And I said, this is tall, venti, and grande. Mm-hmm. Okay? Tall is we need in our legal department somebody to do filing. Mm-hmm. And I said, you would work with the lawyers. They have lots of documents and things that need to be filed, and you would over time learn about the legal profession, and you might want to become a lawyer, or you might want to. By the way, this woman had just graduated high school. Okay. So, and I said, or you might become paralegal, and we would teach you how to do it and how the system works, and that pays X. And then I said, we have a second job, which is actually we run markets, and at the end of the day, every day we have to publish the prices, and oftentimes there are instruments that we list that don't trade, and so we have to figure out if it did trade, where would it trade? And so we use math to do implications. We look at other related markets, and I said there's quantitative people there that are working on relationships between things, and if you went into that, you'd learn about markets. There's a number of places you could go, but it's very, very sort of detailed math oriented, and that pays 30% more than the first job. And I said, and then there's a job here that you are completely unqualified for, but I'm going to describe it to you, and that is that we have opening in our cybersecurity department, and this job requires, according to our specifications, a college degree in engineering or computer science plus 2 years of work experience. Mm-hmm. And that pays, huge. And I said, you're not qualified for that job, but one thing I know about cybersecurity is that whatever you knew yesterday is already worthless. And so once somebody gets into that position, you're going to be in a constant learning. You just need to start. And so anyway, she said, okay, well, let me think about it. And she came back a week later, and she said, I've decided which one I want. I want to go into cybersecurity. And I said, did you talk to your parents about it? And she said, yes, I did. And I said, what did your parents say? And they said, they want me to go to hairdressing school. They want me to pursue my passion. And I said, so, well, then why do you want this job? And she said, I like what it pays. And my parents they feel like if I take a job that pays well and I'm doing it simply for the pay, then I'm going to become unhappy. Hmm. And I said, well, let me tell you my view of this, which is you're completely unqualified for this job. You're going to go in there, and everybody around you is going to say, how did this person get in here? And your answer is going to be, I was cleaning coffee machines, and I impressed the CEO, and he thinks that I'm a hard worker and that I can do this job. You're going to have to go in there and be a hard worker and learn this. You're going to be behind everybody else. They may or may not be helpful. You're going to have to show them that you deserve to be there. And by the way, if you're not happy, if you don't like it, if it isn't interesting, you'll never You'll never catch up because your own limitations will prevent you. And I'm going to fire you. And so go tell your parents that we're all aligned. You're either going to love this job and you're going to excel at it, or you're going to hate it
and you're going to go be a hairdresser.
Hairdresser school. So anyway, we hire this woman. My deal with her is I want you to still get up at 4 a.m. I want you to be the first one in the office. And she's done that, and she is a rock star.
No kidding.
And she loves it. And so anyway, her journey and this kind of random quality that she had of hard work, not random, but random in the way that I discovered it.
It was light in terms of her colleagues.
Exactly. Caused us to say, well, there's probably a lot of people out there that maybe we should stick in jobs that on paper they may not be qualified for.
But they have that something special.
They have that something special. And that's hard to hire. It's hard to know passion on a resume. It's hard to know ethics and that little something special that wants to succeed, that little spark that wants to be a part of a winning team. And if you have that, you can train people almost anything. I mean, and by the way, we're not going to Mars. We're building software and data.
But we have an internship program at the flowers companies, and that's what I'm always saying. What we're doing is training people, giving a good experience. We get a lot out of it too, their energy, their youth, all of which works for us. But I said we should be looking for those few. If they have 20, look for 2 who have that something special.
Yes.
And as I look around our company, the people who are 8 years out of that intern program that are still around, or they all still have that something special, that work ethic, that ability to get other people to follow them. And you just can't see that on a resume.
Yeah, my company has a relationship. There are a number of – my company's pretty big, so we can take some risk with our hiring. And there are some inner city organizations that God bless them, go into troubled schools and look for the 1 or 2 or 3 kids that or the families or the parents that want to push their kids in a different direction, identify these kids, and we hire. I think we've maybe hired 50 or so. And some third party has said to us, I think you should give this kid a chance. What we have found is you give somebody a chance, and the loyalty and the drive and the energy that they'll bring to making sure that you realize that they appreciate what you've done. I had a kid got in the elevator one day, and a guy said, "Sir, can I introduce myself to you?" And I said, "You don't have to call me sir. You can call me Jeff." And he said, "No, you changed my life." And I said, "I did?" And I said, how did I do that? He said, "You gave me a job."
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing power for people that have aspirations to move up.
Let's make this the best spring ever. Sweeten any day with rich baklava, chocolate delights, and other treats to share with the people you love most.
There's a charity I don't know if you've heard of it, in Atlanta. We opened up an Atlanta distribution center several years ago. We have them in West Coast, Ohio, Illinois, and we needed something in the Southeast, so we chose Atlanta. And we had a terrible time staffing it. And then we met, I met a lady on an airplane. She's a Buckhead resident, and her name is Monica Block. She had just a year before, lost her husband. And she told me, I always say I don't talk to the person I'm sitting next to on an airplane. I'm a liar.
That's not true. I met you sitting next to you.
And Monica told me that one of her concerns was that a charity her husband started would falter now that he was gone. And she's a young woman, a very nice woman. And so she introduced me to that charity. And it's Amelia and Matt run First Step. And First Step, as she described to me, was, if you're homeless, how the heck do you get out of that circumstance?
Yes.
How do you get a job? You likely don't have a phone. You don't have any place they can mail you something. If you're walking off the street, they're not even going to let you fill in an application. It's a huge first step. You've been incarcerated. You get out. How do you get that first job?
Right.
And so we partnered with Amelia and Matt at First Step, and Monica's husband had bought a temporary employment agency. And then he did a wraparound of a social service capability. Brilliant. It is so effective. So we hired for our big season with Harry and David and our other food gift brands is the holiday season, fourth calendar quarter. And we staff that with almost all First Step people. But they have job counselors, social workers involved, and they provide transportation, a place to shower, toiletries, and clothes. We have a 95+% on-time show-up rate. They work as hard as can be. They're so like that young man in the elevator with you. They're just so appreciative of an opportunity when they were at the point where they didn't think it was possible to get out of their circumstance.
Yeah. You know, we started this conversation about the job displacement of AI, but we drifted into and I'm optimistic because I think regardless of how jobs change,
clearly they're going to change.
They are going to change that, but there are people that will adapt to the opportunities that will be created by those jobs. And you know, we've just given evidence of a number of people that
stepped into the breach.
Yes.
We talked about AI, we talked about machine learning and how you look at big, hairy, audacious problems and say there's got to be a way, that engineering mind of yours. I'm hearing a lot and I don't really understand. How will tokenization change your world? When I hear people talking about tokenization of a masterpiece of art, where you can own 1/1000th of that piece of art, and that can trade.
Yeah.
How does that change your world?
I think the biggest impact is not going to be on you owning a little fraction of a piece of art. I think the biggest impact is on the banking system and the way money moves. And right now money moves on a series of wires between banks. And you and I have credit cards and debit cards and online shopping and
buy now, pay later.
Exactly, which you run, and an infrastructure that your companies have been built on, where you can click a button and money moves. But it's running through this legacy set of wires and pipes that credit cards and banks have long established. And what tokenization promises is to move money on the internet. And the internet is everywhere. Elon's got us surrounded by satellites, and it's everywhere. It's in the middle of the ocean. It's in the jungles.
It's at 50,000 feet.
It's around the world, and those pipes exist that go right to a device you have in your pocket, and a device you have sitting on your desk, and so I think what we're going to tokenize first is money. And the cost of moving money is going to be substantially less than those legacy pipes.
Mm-hmm.
And right now in the U.S., there's a bill, a crypto bill called the Clarity Act that's making its way through. And one of the big debates is about the movement of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much that the technology of doing it, it's how do you regulate it?
Is a dollar a tokenization of something else? It used to be a tokenization of gold.
Right. That's a good question. I mean, right now, a bill that was passed at the end of last year called the Genius Act says that you can have a stable coin, and a stable coin has to be backed by U.S. Treasuries. And look, partly why government did that, it's like, buy our stuff, buy Treasuries.
Mm-hmm.
But as you pointed out, you can tokenize anything. And we've been working with a number of the big banks to tokenize your savings account
mm-hmm.
in the bank. The allure, when you and I grew up, we dealt with paper money. You go to a store and you would have paper money and they would give you change. and you had paper money in your wallet, and if you dropped your wallet on the sidewalk, some nice person might actually give you your wallet back, but the money would be gone.
Yep.
And we live in a world now where there's a generation that they buy stuff and they say, I didn't really want that, or I lost my credit cards and somebody went to Rome on it, but I've called somebody and they've reversed all those charges. Well, we may go back to this tokenization where your money is a token and it's on your phone. And if you lose your phone, you may lose your money.
Yeah.
Now, there are people building technologies to try to have that be more recoverable. But the idea here is that if you can store your money on your phone, then are you going to have a bank account? What is the reason that you're going to have a bank account?
Oh.
And partly why lenders are, you and I borrowed money to build our businesses from banks. And so one of the big debates is, what does it mean to take money out of the banking system so that it can't be lent? What does it really mean for you and I to tokenize everything and keep custody ourselves?
Where? Yeah.
You and I used to go to banks that had safe deposit boxes, and we had a key. There was stuff in it.
There were banks that had vaults.
Yes. Here in the New York Stock Exchange, I can show you a full wall of those little boxes. Like a young person would be like, why would somebody want that? So anyway, part of the debate about tokenization and the regulation of tokenization has to do with tokenizing money and who holds it, and how does it regulate, and how does it affect the banking system, and how do you prevent money laundering? How do you prevent behavior with money that government doesn't like? Should you?
Yeah.
What role does the government have in that movement of money?
And
how do you trace it?
And what does that do to fiat currencies?
Correct. And so anyway, it's coming fast.
Yes.
It's another one of those things like AI where I don't know that we know exactly what it disrupts. It's going to probably have some bumps in the road.
For sure.
As we get there. But, and by the way, a token is a encrypted bunch of digits.
Yep.
And there are people building quantum computers where people are already saying, well, we're going to build a computer that can unencrypt
Yes.
those digits and take your money. And there are others that are saying, well, we're going to build better encrypted money that you're going to use the computers to make. So it may drive us all back to using paper money. I don't know. It's a bit like how AI can create these deep fakes where you can watch a video and you may not be able to believe what you see. And
they're amazing.
And it may be that you and I, we go back to a society where we only believe the people that we know and sitting in front of them. And maybe we only accept money that is in the form of paper or maybe gold. I don't know. I just know it's coming quickly, and the internet is a different kind of network that is much broader than anything we've ever seen, touches everybody. Tether, which is a cryptocurrency, has 500 million clients.
500 million.
500 million. Okay, think of a bank.
And
okay?
This
is the world's largest distribution. There are certain economies, there are certain countries or parts of countries in Africa and parts of Asia where the street vendors, the tuk-tuk driver, the taxi man only accepts digital currency. They don't like the currency of their indigenous country. They don't have a bank account. They're never going to walk in a bank. They don't have a trading account. They're never going to meet a stockbroker. And they are just all digital, and they're going to live on their telephones. And that's the world that has come quickly. That at least in the U.S., the Trump administration is trying to figure out how to at least bring it into some kind of a regulatory system where it can evolve in a way that at least government wants.
You wanted to develop, you don't want it, but you want to develop safely.
Yes, that government does. There's proponents out
there. Some governments, a recent administration, really didn't want crypto to come along.
No, and there are people in crypto that don't want any regulation. There's two sides of the coin.
It's going to happen. So be there and be at the table with a David Sachs who's advising the president and the administration?
One thing I tell a lot of, because we've been heavily involved in this, and one thing I tell a lot of the maximalists that don't want any oversight is that I'm a Christian, and in my religion, Moses came down a mountain with 2 tablets, and on there it says, you can't steal somebody else's money.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been so many laws passed in this society that are about fiduciary responsibility to one another and how we deal with money.
Mm-hmm.
Probably no more laws than anything, more than murder, is how we deal with money. And to disrupt the lawmaking that is just the piles and piles and piles of laws that have been written since Moses was on that mountain, to say we're going to throw all that out, it's, for a guy in my generation, it's hard to believe.
Well, we're going to run it through ChatGPT and streamline it all.
There you go. And it'll probably come back and say, thou shalt not steal.
For sure. I'm so looking forward to our conversation. I was trying to think of what areas might be intriguing to you, and you've touched on a few already. But one that I had on my list is I thought about you being able to, and your team, look at big, complex problems. I've changed my mind this year about whether or not we need to do something about the student loan debt load. I also have an interest in from a social, cultural point of view, of seeing the idea of a year of service instituted in this country for young people. Could those be linked in some way? Is that something you've looked at? Because the idea that these young people are graduating with all of this debt without education that is proper for them anymore. The good news is education is going to become a lot cheaper, but a lot of people are burdened with this debt. And we all know the problems at the university level systems where their inflation has been 6% for the last 25 years when real inflation hasn't been. But if the government's subsidizing it, that happens. But now we have this bubble there. Do you look at that as an opportunity to wade in? I'm sure with your influence in with people in Washington, in particular with this administration, I'm sure there are people looking at this.
Well, the president has asked my wife to look at it, so I'm
right?
very familiar with it. And I'm not going to speak for her or the administration. But let me just frame the problem, which is fact-based. When I did go to college and I did borrow money, mm-hmm. and I subsequently paid it back through work. When I did that, I went to a bank and borrowed the money, and there were some government guarantees to incent the bank. There were other government policies that incented the bank to take a risk for me as a young person to borrow the money, and that changed when we passed Obamacare, which most people don't realize. The government was trying to figure out how to pay for Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they decided to do was have all student loans be put out directly by the government.
Off the government balance sheet.
Off the government balance sheet, take the banks out, so they push the banks out of the market, and then calculate how much interest the government would earn and use that profit to offset health care costs.
I didn't know that.
It sounds good on paper. But there are no government agents that are going to meet with individual borrowers. And so how did the government go about deploying this money? Well, they went to all the schools and universities and they said, well, you have a finance department. You figure out who should get the money,
mm-hmm.
and we'll give it to the university. Well, what happened in that period? The cost of a university, used to be that for $50,000 you could go to Harvard or Yale or what were considered the best universities in the country. Well, my little university, I went to a state school. Suddenly state schools are $50,000. Everything's $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
The universities that you barely ever heard of for $50,000. And there's a finance department in there that is handing out, or I shouldn't say handing out, that is lending out government money.
And what's their incent?
Exactly. And so the incentives were not there to graduate the student and put them into an employable profession. You could go and learn how to play the harp,
mm-hmm.
And have a bunch of debt. So Today, something like 40% of all outstanding student loans are in arrears. It's a huge cohort of people. And it's not clear that, and most Americans think, well, look, you borrowed the money. And
I was in that camp a year ago.
You borrowed the money and you should pay it back. But then there's the reality of, well, they went and learned to play a harp.
Yes.
And
it doesn't pay that well.
You know how, and so how? Yeah, there's a few harp. I don't want to throw harp.
A few really well paid harpists.
At the philanthropic harmonica. So anyway, the dilemma is what is fair, but how do you reshape the incentives in this country?
How do you stop the pool from growing?
Yes, because it still exists. And how do we make education incentives to educate people in a way that can get them into the job market?
And you don't want to disadvantage the fellow who didn't go to college, didn't borrow the money. And I said, wait a minute, you're going to forgive their debt?
Yeah.
That's coming out of my pocket.
Right. So this is not an easy problem.
It sure isn't, but I figured you'd be working on it. Better to know that Kelly is.
I'm supporting my wife as she, and there's other people looking at, some of it is how do we deal with the fairness of the past?
Yes.
And how do we, more importantly, realign the incentives going forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thrilled that the family Sprecher is working on it because it is
it's not me.
Big
it's
issue.
It's somebody that really
knows what
is
they're
passionate
doing.
about it. Yes.
Jeff, it was so fortuitous to meet you many years ago and to get to know you. And
by the way, your audience should know you are the guy that I happen to sit next to you, and you're friendly and you're a guy that when we said, well, let's get to lunch together for lunch sometime, you get an email or a call and say, hey, let's get together for lunch. And you and I over a period of years have from time to time just thought of each other, seen it or bumped into each other and said, let's go have a lunch.
And I'm so glad you're receptive to it and we've been able to do that, and what a thrill it is to get to spend time with you today.
I hope your audience understands, the kind of person you are that draws these great guests. It's you're a magnet for people.
Look how lucky I am. I get to meet with nice, smart, good people and learn from them, and how lucky am I?
Yeah, you're very kind.
Thank you.